But what I have over here are treats, literally treats, that you guys should be dancing like kids on Purim or on Halloween. Literally candies over here. I got 3 books. Yeah. And anyone wants to venture a guess what these books are?
Let's see.
And can everyone read the Hebrew?
Halam. Without the vowels. I'm bad enough with the vowels.
Talmud Bavli.
Oh.
Bavli?
Which means Babylonian Talmud. This is it. This is the famous Babylonian Talmud. This is the real thing. These are 3 books of the Babylonian Talmud. There's many, many, many more where they came from. But the reason why it's a treat, because we're going to be analyzing today some of the books or the statements in these books of the Talmud and their pertinent statements to our discussion that we have today. So our brother says, I want you to talk about the soul. The soul is kind of this mysterious entity that we hear about, we know about, we perhaps feel, but we need definitions on one hand. We need to know what exactly does it mean, what does it do, what's its function, what's its role, how are we supposed to relate it. All those questions are not necessarily answered or addressed directly until now. And my brother tells me, I want you to give all the information about the soul, but to a point. I don't want you to tell me anything about the soul after the child's born. I want everything, all that the Torah says about the soul before birth, which I find to be incredible, because there's so much content, so much information, so much knowledge, so much wisdom, so much Torah statements regarding the soul, or even the child in utero, child at conception, where's the soul, where does the child get the soul, when does the child get the soul, and what's the role of the soul in the child before they're born. All these very interesting things, which are very insightful to us, even us, we are already born. We are already here. So it's the idea of gestation for us personally. But the lessons of the Torah and the insights that we can glean from what the Torah says about the child in utero and the soul when it's before it's born teach us a lot about defining the soul and also what's the role of the soul. So that's why it was written. Remember, the word Torah, as we all know, the word Torah means instruction. Is that right? Torah means instruction. Why would the Torah be called instruction? Because it's instructions. It's a roadmap. It's the blueprint. It's an instruction manual. It's the guide. Thus,
You want me to start with this?
no, it's fine. I'm good. I keep my head on a swivel.
Join us on this side.
It's called the Torah because it's instructions, and thus the statements of the Torah are instructive. So when the Torah gives us a lot of information about a child before they're born, clearly there's instructions for us, even though we are already after that point. Thank God. So let's start with this. Life begins. Finish the sentence. According to Judaism, life begins at birth. Oh, that's what guess. At conception, another guess.
At first cry.
At first cry.
Yeah. After it's no longer considered water.
After it's no longer considered. Why do you know that?
What is it that? Because I go to a lot of classes.
After it's no longer considered water. Okay.
Water. So isn't that conception?
No.
When's that? When's that?
Past conception.
Do you know what that is?
I want to say after the first trimester. I still heard.
Nice.
There she is.
So what you are referencing is the Talmud
Sit elsewhere.
in the book of Yevamos. And the Talmud in the book of Yevamos says that the first 40 days after conception, the child is Maya Be'alma, which is merely water. So you hit the nail on the head. But I'm saying you took that to mean that that's when life begins. But I don't know when life begins. I don't know how. It depends how to define life. But what the Torah tells us about children and about the formation of children and what spiritually happens to a child before they're born, and not only it starts by conception, it starts before conception. We find lessons or statements from the Torah What happened to the child before conception? Well, you say, wait a minute, whoa, Rabbi. If there's no conception, what are we talking about?
Right.
The answer is that it's spiritual. Thus, spiritually, we're not bound to time, right? What is a prophet? What is a prophet? Someone who foretells the future. Moses, in writing the Torah, writes about the state of Israel and writes about the Holocaust. It's written there. I can show you where it's written. It's clearly referring to that, and I have just simple and sophisticated proof that it's clearly written there. So, but Moses died 3,300 years ago. Well, the idea of a prophet is that they're not bound to time because they're so enmeshed, so submerged in spirituality that they're able to gain a spiritual sense that doesn't make them bound to time and space. Now, what's the most spiritual thing in the world? Or of all? What's the most spiritual thing of all? That's right! Does God have a bound to time and space? Absolutely not. We're physical. Physical, we're limited, right? We can only exist today, right now. Right? What happened yesterday? Well, that's for us that we'll never be able to recapture that. However, that still lives with us because we have a spiritual element to us as well. But I can't see what's happening behind there. Why? I can't see what's happening in the vestibule of the shul. How come? Well, there's something blocking me, and I'm limited, and my eyes only see as far as there's no obstacles. Right? That's a limitation. That's a human limitation because we're physical. Right? The Almighty, right, that knows where everything is, sees everything. How does He see everything? What about what's under the table? Right? Because man is not bound to those restrictions. Right? Completely spiritual. That doesn't hinder. So spiritually, there are things happening before conception. The Talmud says, 40 days before conception, a bas kol yotzes ve'omeres, bas ploni ploni, I'm just saying the Hebrew. Anyone here speaks Hebrew? But it should just go straight to English. 40 days before conception, a prophetic voice announces, the daughter of so-and-so shall marry this child, yet unborn. The house, so-and-so will be the location of this person's house, and this will be this person's field. Thus, the most important decisions of someone's life, who they'll marry, where they're going to live, buy their house, the biggest investment for most people, and how they're going to achieve their livelihood, their field. Those are already predetermined before the child's born. Well, it means spiritual. Well, so that's a great example. Like spiritually, if you would project this child, that's what they would happen. Of course, someone could change that. So an abortion, what abortion is doing, it's tampering with the spiritual direction. Of course, we have the free will to make those choices, and our free will has impact. So if someone would have lived to 100, but when they were 25, they decided to jump off a roof, jump to a conclusion, wink, wink, right? What they're doing is that they're tampering with, because they have free will. Free will enables a person to change and alter the trajectory of their life. So yes, the guy would have lived. You asked me, the guy was healthy. His heart was working well, and he had very low cholesterol, and he did lots of exercise, and he jumped off the roof, and he killed it all.
So we're not saying life begins. You're saying there's a spirit.
I'm saying, right, I didn't say that life, that's true. What I'm saying is that the information that the Torah tells us about a child it starts even before conception. And it tells us, let's repeat, who he's going to marry, where he's going to buy a house, where he's going to live, and how he's going to make a livelihood. Now, these are the core things that we spend our lives with. The person we share our lives with, where we're going to live, where we spend our time, and what we do. And what the Torah is telling us, this is all predetermined. Now, I ask you a question, Rabbi. So, it's all predetermined. What's the point of telling us? Where's the Torah? Where's the instruction in that? That's the right question you should be asking. You say, Rabbi, you just told us 5 minutes ago, the Torah's about instructions. Where's those instructions? How does it change my life whatsoever? It doesn't seem to be very, very instructive. So what do we do when we find a Torah that's not very, what we find considered to be not very instructive? We got to think. We got to contemplate. We got to find the instructions. You with me, everyone? So, Torah's telling us whoever a person's going to marry, where they're going to live, and what they're going to do for life, that is all predetermined. What's the idea? Yes.
I get confused right here whenever you say there's free will, they can alter, but then everything's predetermined. I mean, that's kind of an oxymoron.
That's right. That's a very good question. So, let me say what I'm going to say, and after, if it's still a problem, then you'll bring back the question over, okay? Perhaps what the Torah is really telling us is that these things, when we evaluate a person, when you evaluate someone, when you meet someone, us physical people, when we meet someone, what do we think? Well, who are they married to? Where do they live? What do they do? That's what we ask someone. Oh, this is your wife. Oh, where do you live? Oh, what do you do? Right? These are the questions that we ask. When God asks, he says, it's all predetermined. It's not even what we're talking about. Before the child's even born, 40 days before the child is even conceived, that's already off the table of importance. But the Torah is telling us, it's not just telling us, it's predetermined, so how is that relevant to me? What it's saying is, from God's perspective, from a spiritual perspective, the things that we, as physical bodies, what we value, what we talk about, it doesn't matter. It was off the table of interest 40 days before conception. That's not what God cares about. What we care about is everything spiritual, is our soul. So yes, does it mean necessarily that these things are set in stone as to this is the person they're going to marry? No, I think it goes much, much deeper than that. Your question is a good question. What happens when God has a plan and someone alters it? How do those things coexist? It's a very good question, and it's a whole class. And maybe if I get invited back, we could tackle that discussion. But I think, yes, go ahead.
You also have the fact that it takes two people to make a person.
That's right.
And
let's
say they meet. 2 weeks later, they're married. 2 weeks later, they have conceived. That's 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But you're talking 40 days before.
Oh, yeah.
So, but how did you even know?
That's the point. It's not what you know. It's a prophetic voice. Prophecy is not bound to time. Prophecy is not bound to time. Yeah. But I think we're getting too caught up in the details. We have to zoom out and say, what's the lesson? The details is a discussion that Monica is asking, that you're asking about. Those are the details. Oh, wait a minute. So they know who we're going to marry? Well, what if that person's the other end of the world? Or what if the house, someone else bought it? What if it goes to foreclosure? What if I buy two houses? Well, which one was it talked about? Right? These are a lot of questions that we could ask in the technical nitty-gritty of this Talmud. But what's the lesson? That's my question. I think the lesson is that from the spiritual centric view of what's a man, what's important, those things, they were discussed before anything even happened. It's not relevant. That's not, when you come to the game, that is life, and the opportunities and the pitfalls and the ups and the downs and the responsibilities that we have here in life, ultimately from the spiritual sense, those things are not that important at all. Idea, that's just an idea. Idea number 2 here. This is kind of along the same lines. The Talmud elsewhere, the book of Nida, 16b, it says, an angel, remember angel spiritual, just remember that as a disclaimer. This is a spiritual idea that we're looking at. An angel, okay, ready? Listen to this, guys. An angel who is in charge of conception. The angel's name is called Lila. Lila means night. The name of the angel. Okay. He takes a tipa. Tipa means a drop. It's a reference to a seed. Yeah. Yeah, well, Shmo, his name is, that's his name. Shmo means Shem Shalom, his name. Yeah, it's not, well, I'm saying.
Yeah, what happened? You lost us.
To what?
You went from a female to a male all in one
No. Lila is his name.
His
Lila is his name.
Yeah,
Oh,
like
All
when you
right.
think of Lila Lee, remember her? Muhammad Ali's daughter.
Right.
Sorry,
But she was a girl.
that's right. But this angel is masculine. Remember, angels don't have genders, right? Because they don't,
Right.
But in the Hebrew, it's evident from the grammar that this is a male, a masculine. So I don't know if it's male or female, but it's masculine. Either way, the angels hold Lila, and the angel takes a drop of seed, and presents it to the Almighty. And he asks the Almighty, this drop, what will be on it? Will this drop be a strong person or a weak person? Will this drop be smart, intelligent, or wicked? I'm sorry, or not wicked, or fickle-minded, or will be intelligent or not so smart. Not everyone's so sharp. Or will this person be wealthy or poor? So, what's determined? Right, this is the angel which is in charge of conception. So this is before conception. We have that one drop that's going to produce this sperm that's going to produce the baby. And we say, well, what's the sperm? What's the qualifications? Is it strong or weak? Is it intelligent or silly or dumb? Is it wealthy or is it poor? That's all asked of the Almighty. He says, okay, it'll be wealthy, it'll be strong or weak or poor, whatever. That's already determined before conception. However, what is not determined is, will they be wicked or righteous? And from that, the Gemara concludes, all is in the hands of heaven, aside from fear of heaven. It means everything is, so to speak, predetermined, besides for what a person could do on their own, and that's the spiritual things. And I think that these two lessons that we learned about mirror each other. And that is that, what do we value? When someone shows off, when someone's prideful of something, what are they prideful of? One of three things. Their materialism, their physicality, right? I'm really strong, I'm really intelligent, or I'm really wealthy. Those are basically the three things. And what does the Torah tell us? Those things we don't care about. Before you were born, it was determined. Does it mean it was actually determined more about hard work? Of course, that's if we get into the technical aspects. But the lesson is that those things are immaterial in how we view man. Before the person was even made a man, before conception, that's when it was important. That's when it was even discussed. Afterwards, it wasn't discussed at all. So when we start talking about what the Torah tells us about the child in utero, we find out some very interesting insights for us in life. If I were to ask you a question, okay, from those two Talmudic statements, number one, that there's a prophetic voice 40 days before conception, who they'll marry, where they'll live, and what field they're going to own. Number one. Number two, that the angel presents the seed in front of the Almighty before conception and asks, is it to be wealthy or poor, intelligent or not so sharp, strong or weak. From that, we learn what? We learn priorities. We learn what's important on the spiritual centric of man. And what, for us, is important, but only because we're physically wired. Right? Only because our vantage point, our perspective on life, is one of our body and less of our soul. We are body first, soul second. When you ask someone, what do you care about? Right? Typically, ask the average American, it'll be one of these things. Right? Who I'm going to marry, who I'm going to be with, hang out in bars, whatever, meet people, relationships, right? That's what they care about. Number two, right? Where am I going to buy a house? Where am I going to live? Well, this house is really nice. That house, which neighborhood should we live in? And number three, what am I going to do for a living? That's what people talk about. And what are they prideful about? What are their accomplishments? Muscles, go out to work and work out. And look at me, I'm very strong. Oh, I'm very intelligent. Yeah. I may or may not have gone to an Ivy League school. I'm actually really smart upstairs, And my money, that's what people are proud about. Why are they proud about that? Why is that what us humans value? When the Torah, the spiritual centric perspective, negates that. It's all before you're born. It was not even important. It's off the table by the time you're even conceived, because we have diametrically opposite perspectives and vantage points on life. We see the world through the glass or through the prism of physicality, of our body. Right? Our body, we feel it. It's there. It's our consciousness. You know, if I go like this to your eyes, you were a little closer. You would have blinked. I don't know if you did blink or not. Right? You blink. Why'd you blink? Because your body's just wired with all those instincts to, that's what you are. If I say, if I give you a little punch in your arm, or give you what we used to call a dead leg, I don't know if they still call it dead leg. Remember that? Where you give someone, well, of course I didn't do it. Well, maybe I did. You give like a little kid, you put your knee like right over here.
Oh, yeah,
it's called a dead leg. It's like, ooh, so painful, right? You feel pain. Where do we feel pain? Our body. You know why we don't feel pain of our soul? Because it's buried deep within ourselves. What we feel when we think of ourselves, we think of our body. When someone dies, God forbid, right? We're all so sad. Why are we sad? Because we associate someone with their body. And if their body is submerged in the ground and rotting away, the person's gone. But what? But they're not gone. Because they still have a soul. The soul's still intact perfectly. My grandfather wrote in his last will and testament, he wrote that you should know, if you were close to me when I was alive, you should know we could be even closer after death. Why? Because essentially the soul is just removed from the body. And that's why the person dies. But the soul is still intact. The body starts withering away. 10 minutes or 20 minutes after the body stops working, the body already starts decomposing and starts getting cold. It's over. It's over. Within a day, it's there. You got to put it away. For us, it's so traumatic, it's so painful because we view the world physically. We see someone, we see their body. Therefore, if the body's no longer working, the person's disappeared forever. What does the Torah say? How does God view us? How is the spiritual-centric view of humans? We see a soul. Well, what happened to the soul after it died? It died. Nothing. The soul's just fine and dandy. So the soul is as alive and awake and as unhindered and as untethered as it was in the body. Much more so.
Where did it go?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's a very good question. What happens to the soul after death? That's a question that we have to discuss. So we have two more classes you have to invite me back for. Monica's question, your question. But we believe in the soul, and that's the topic of the conversation, and from the soul's perspective, death is merely an unshackling of the soul from the body. Our soul is buried so deep within ourselves that when we see the world, we evaluate, we make decisions, we think, and we don't ever consult with our soul. We make evaluations, we make calculations, we make decisions in our lives, and what are we using? Our bodies, our physicality. We make decisions. What's important to us? Do we say what's important to our soul or what's important to our body? If I gave you the punch in the arm or the leg, you would feel it because you are wired to feel pain and pleasure of your body, but only your body. If you're thirsty and you drink water, you feel really good. When you eat matzah or you wear tefillin, it's the same thing to your body as a glass of water. If someone's walking through the desert and someone gives them a glass of water, it's a tremendous pleasure. Our soul is also walking through the desert, and the tefillin is the glass of water. And if we could feel our soul, that's what we would feel exactly, no different. So there's this reality that's the parallel reality of the soul in our body, and how God sees it versus how we see it. Or how our soul sees it versus how we live. And it's on one hand, it's very comforting. It's the idea of the soul and the spiritual not being bound to time and being eternal. Like that's kind of a very nice feeling to think about all this, everything that we do. It's it's like a race to the end. It's like We're all going to die at the end, right? We're all going to die. So what's the point of it? It's not going to last, but it will last. Our body won't last. Physically, we're going to decompose, all of us, but there's some legacy that we're going to have that's eternal. And that's our soul. But we don't feel our soul. The Torah gives us these lessons of what happens to a child even before they're born, to teach us this great lesson. Let's move on to the next thing. So the soul. So what's the soul? In fact, what's this harmony that we have between this? Or harmony is the worst word I could have ever used. Sorry. What is this marriage of our soul and our body? Unfortunately, as we know, marriage and harmony don't necessarily go hand in hand, right? So, what's man? So, what's the Hebrew? Anyone knows what the Hebrew word for man is? Adam. Thank you. Everyone said it at the same time. Adam. We know in Hebrew, there's a great principle in Hebrew where the etymology of the word reveals the nature of the word. The word Adam means man. The word Adamah means earth. So Adamah sounds very similar. The word Adameh means I will be like, be similar to. So the Talmud tells us that Adam, man, is half Adamah, half earth, half Adameh, half be similar to. And it says similar to who? Similar to what? Similar to God. Man is this marriage of a physical body that when you put it in the ground, it just gets decomposes, and after some time, the body just becomes no different than the earth around it. Right? God created man from from earth. It says in Genesis, right? That's on one end. That's our physical body. Our soul is this Adameh, similar to God. We have a fusion of our body, a body and soul, of two radically opposite elements. Our body, which is the lowest thing, simplest thing, earth, it's just on the floor always, sedentary, doesn't get impressed by anything, just stays there, just nothing. And a soul that's similar to God, creator of heaven and earth. We're told Jewish people like the sand and like the stars. Remember that? Abraham's told by God, right? Your kids will be like the sand and the stars. So typically we think about that, will be a lot of them. There's a lot of grains of sand, a lot of stars in the universe. Okay. That's one way to look at it. But what's the difference between a granule of salt of sand versus a star? Right? A star can be many, many hundreds of times the size of our Earth. Right? It's this spectrum with these opposites where the body is like the sand. It's nothing. It's not relevant. It's not lasting. It's immaterial, so to speak. And the star can be like the sun, which probably provides illumination to the entire world. Without the sun for a half a second, we'd all be done. If the sun's a little bit closer, a little further away, it's like the sun. You can't even look at the sun, right? And our souls compared to the sun elsewhere. Just remarkable force, remarkable energy. We're a fusion of those two. That's what man is. Half body, half soul. Go ahead.
Rabbi, I thought that your soul gets like recycled, like.
That's back to your question for the other class. We have to be invited for. I have to be invited back for, which is what happens after you die.
You're invited. After we die, we'll have you back.
No. Way before then.
All right. I'm the same.
Yeah. Yes. A good question about how reincarnation works. Go ahead.
We don't realize that God is always in contact with us. We cannot feel that.
We can't, exactly. Like I said, if we drink the water, we feel it right away. We do the mitzvah, we don't feel anything.
No,
Usually not. We eat matzah, it doesn't feel spiritual. It feels like a cracker.
He's working day and night on our soul.
Well, not even that. It's like a proxy, so to speak. It's an entity within ourselves that is like God. Pretty incredible. So that's what human is. I asked you, what's the Hebrew word for human? For man? Mankind? Adam. What does that mean? What does it tell us about the very fabric, the makeup of man? Is that man, by definition, is half body, half Adamah, half something like God, Adamah, the soul. They say to me, Rabbi, you're telling me the soul's like God? Well, actually I am. In fact, I have the Talmud that corroborates that, and hopefully we'll get to it at the end of our discussion today. The Talmud says that puts God and the angels and the human soul on the same pedestal, which is remarkable. So that's what humans are. Thus, this marriage is a marriage of, imagine a marriage where the two people on a marriage couldn't be any more different. They're just opposites. They have different ways of doing every single thing in the world. They're exact opposite of each other. Is this a marriage that's likely to last or not? What do you guys think? Usually not, right? Usually, right. Is that right? There is no marriage of two humans that is more radically opposite than our body's marriage to our soul. Nothing. They're so different, they literally couldn't be any further away from each other. Body and the soul. So I said it's a marriage, but it's not a harmony. And the Midrash tells us that every single second, our soul wants to escape from our body. It's like such oppression, such suppression, such pain our soul has. Every second it wants to leave.
So it's one to die.
It's one what?
So you're essentially saying it's one to die to commit suicide?
Well, no, not to commit suicide, to just escape the misery of being in such close contact with a body. Because they're just opposites. It's like, when you have two magnets, you guys know about magnets, and then you put them on the opposite sides and they repel each other. You know they do that? Magnets are repel. That's what it's like. They are opposite. They're forces that contradict each other. Self-contradictory forces. But God, every second, commands the soul to stay within the body. This is by design. This marriage of disharmony, right? United by God. What's our job in life? How would you explain our mission in life? Our mission is to make harmony in this horrible marriage or ill-suited marriage. That's our mission. To create unity, to create equilibrium, to make harmony between these opposite entities, body and soul. That's our mission in life. How do we do that? We take people that are so different, make harmony.
Become more godly.
Booyah. Booyah! Our job in life is to take our physical body, Adamah, earth, physical. All it cares about is those 6 things we talked about. It cares about who we're going to marry and where we're going to live and what we're going to do for a living and how we're going to make more money and be more wealthy and be stronger and be more intelligent. That's what it cares about. And bring its agenda closer to what the soul's agenda is. To uplift the body. Mitzvahs. We talk about mitzvahs. How many mitzvahs? We have hundreds of mitzvahs. What's the purpose of the mitzvahs? To help us along that path. To take our mitzvahs are done primarily with our body, right? We wear tefillin around our body. Right? We say blessings. We study Torah with our body. Why? What that does, it takes our body and it makes it more spiritual. Every mitzvah we do, these opposites become a little closer. Our body becomes a little bit more spiritual and a little bit less repulsive and repugnant and repellatory towards our soul. And the more mitzvahs we do, the more our body becomes uplifted, the more spirituality we bring into our lives, the closer our body gets to being in harmony with our soul. the less it wants to escape. Now, who was the greatest man that ever lived? Crickets. Greatest man that ever lived. That's right, Moshe. And if you guys want to take a look at some mind-blowing midrash, remember I told you guys, every single second the soul wants to escape the body. Every single second, every single second. For the soul, death is a liberation, because it finally could shed itself of this horrible influence of the body. There's a midrash that tells us what happened to Moses when Moses died. And it tells us that Moses' soul absolutely refused to leave its body. Moses, the greatest man that lived, what does that mean? Definition. He accomplished his life goal in a better way than anyone else. He uplifted his body. His body was no longer opposite to his soul. He took the earth, he took the sand, and made it like the stars. So his soul says, I'm not leaving. So God says an angel, said, remarkable. It's a very long midrash, but if you get your hands, it's the very last midrash in all of Midrash Rabbah. Only at the end of Deuteronomy where Moses dies. God sends angels, come take the soul of Moses. So the angel Gabriel comes and says, I want to take the soul of Moses. And the soul says, I ain't going nowhere. I want to stay here. He says, well, but you can come be with the Almighty. He says, I don't care. I'd rather be in the body of Moses. What? You'd rather be in a body? What does that mean? You'd rather be in a body? The bodies are horrible. Bodies are terrible, gruesome, putrid, repugnant, repulsive. Why would you want to be in a body? The answer is because Moses, greatest man that ever lived. What does that mean? He uplifted his body to such a degree that his body was no longer physical. His body was no longer driven by the physicality. He didn't care about anything else. All the money and all the honor and all the nonsense that our body values, Moses didn't value that at all. What Moses' body, even his body, was a wonderful receptacle for his soul. Thus, Moses' soul says, sorry, there's no place I'd rather be than in the body of Moses.
What about Elijah?
Yeah, so Elijah's obviously a great man. Another great man, Elijah, and he went up in chariots. Is that what you're referring to?
He didn't die.
Yeah, so there's a few people that they didn't die. And this is
So his soul didn't want to leave his body.
well, that's another example. Well, we don't have that same narrative with Elijah, but we do have this same idea where the body with Elijah he didn't die because usually we'll get this a little bit later. Death is separation of soul and body. And we talked about our responsibility as having the body become uplifted to the soul. What's the opposite? If someone just sins and just lets the body just take over their life, what happens? The soul gets dragged down into the body. So not only is the body not uplifted, but the soul is pulled down. Thus, the soul becomes mixed up in the body. So a definition of death for most people is you got to pull the soul outside of the body because it becomes so enmeshed and enshrouded and embedded into the body. As opposed to a few people, it says Jacob didn't die, Elijah didn't die. It means because their body was so seamless, because their body was never influencing the soul, only the soul influencing the body. So that's a kind of parallel. So what it says is that Moses died misas nishika. This is the most seamless form of death. And in fact, I'll tell you guys a cute little secret. In the book of Brachos, it says that there's 903 different levels of death. Now, what does it mean a different level of death? Death is death is death is death. That is, there's 903 levels where the of degree of enmeshment of the soul and body. So the more the body drags the soul into the mud with it, the harder it is to pull the soul out of the body. That makes sense. The closer the more ensconced the soul gets into the body, the harder it is to undo that. Unfortunately, a lot of people, instead of having their body uplifted, they drag their soul down. And therefore, what happens to that is that it's harder to undo that.
That's why they're
I don't know anything about ghosts, but what it says like this, it says, the Talmud says, this is in Brachos, I wasn't planning on talking about it, but thanks for bringing it up. The Talmud says that there's 903 levels of death. The worst one is called Askara. And Askara is akin to pulling thorns or pulling thorns out of wool. So imagine you have, let's say, a sheep that ran through a bunch of thorns. So now there's all these thorns caught up into the tight ball of wool. You got to pull it out, but you pull it out, little bits of wool come along with the thorns, a little bit of thorn gets stuck in there because it gets in so tightly. It gets such a mess, it's so hard to undo. That's the worst kind of death. The best death's called Neshika, what Moses had, and that is like pulling a hair out of a glass of milk. Very seamless. The soul was not dragged down at all into the nonsense of the body. No, we're not going to say that. With your conscience in Jewish literature, we call it your lave, otherwise, or known as your heart. What the soul is. So my grandfather gave a great definition of soul. It said, "Shalhevet Yah," verse in I think the Song of Songs. I think it's the Songs of Songs. Shalhevet Yah, which means the flame of God. This class is part of the Shalhevet program, right? Shalhevet means flame or fire, right? Shalhevet Yah means the fire of God. That's how that's how King Solomon described our soul. Our soul is the fire of God within ourselves. Like I said, it's compared to God in many, many, many different ways. Okay. Wow, we still have so much more to go here. Is it a firm 8:30 that we're done, or we can go a little overtime? We still have some time, I know, but okay, good. So we have some more time. Okay, good. Okay, so when does the child get the soul? So we're talking about what happens before conception. When does the child get the soul? No, I said 4 days after there's the prophetic voice. When does the child get the soul? So there's a great debate here in the book of Sanhedrin, and it kind of we're told who the two members of the side of the debate is. Very interesting. There was a Roman emperor whose name was Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, and he was a close friend of the Jews, and he in fact was a comrade of Rabbi Judah Hanasi, Rabbi Judah the Prince, and they would often engage in philosophical discussions that the Talmud records. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Rabbi Judah the Prince, went on to write down the Mishnah, codify the Mishnah. But because he had such a close relationship with the Roman leadership, they allowed such a monumental project to be undertaken. So he asks a bunch of questions about the body and soul. Antoninus and Rebbe had a dialogue back and forth about the soul and the body, etc. One of them I'm going to leave till next time here. But then he asks 2 questions. He says, when does a child get a soul? When does a child have a soul? So that's the question that Antoninus asked Rabbi Judah the Prince. So he says, so they prove that it must be from conception. Why? The example they give, this example is very interesting. It says, is it possible to have a piece of meat and not salt it, and for it to not get spoiled? We know that back in the day, if you wanted to preserve meat, you would have to salt it. That would preserve it. So So too says Antoninus, and Rebbe acquiesced or agreed to that if you have it for even a second, if you have a body that does not have, or any physicality that doesn't have a soul, it's the soul is compared over here to what preserves, what maintains the body. Just like the salt preserves and maintains the meat, so too the soul preserves and maintains the body. The idea being, perhaps, that the soul gives life to the body. Maybe this might go back to answer your question. It's a life-giving.
So how can life not begin in conception?
Well, yeah, but it depends. So life begins, but with regards to you seem to be asking the whole abortion question. So I don't want to go down that line. It's a third class that we need to arrange.
Okay. I keep bringing you back to that.
No, I'm fine to talk about this because I know I kind of asked for it by saying life begins at conception. But the life, as in the existence of a soul, begins at conception. Does that necessarily mean that abortion would be akin to murder? No one would argue that, because the Talmud does give kind of the extremes of the abortion debate are discussed, and clearly the fundamentalist Christian idea of any form of abortion is akin to flat out murder is not what the Jewish belief. As to what is the Jewish belief, it's somewhere in the middle. The idea of just wholesale abortion and just living with your mistakes and just getting over with, and that's also not a Jewish idea of just discretionary abortion for no reason. So it falls somewhere along those lines. There's a lot of different opinions.
So is it identified in the Torah?
Abortion? Yes, it is discussed.
Is it clarified?
It is clarified.
Okay.
There's a lot of material in it. I've spoken to it. If you want to hear more about that, I've given several classes on that subject. Go to my website, rabbiwalby.com website. And just on Sunday, I uploaded my 200th class to the website. So you go there and go to the search bar and click abortion. You should see I have, I believe, 2 or 3 different times I've discussed it.
When you're in a coma, what happens to
Another good question. That's another good question. So that relates to her question if the soul is the consciousness or not. So yeah, but right now we have a few definitions. It's a good question. I don't know exactly. I'd assume that it's still there, otherwise you'd be dead. By definition. So where is it? I don't know. It's a good question. But we have this description of the soul being the flame of God and it being life-giving. On more detail, we find in the book of Nida, we find the statement here, there's 3 partners in man. Every man has 3 partners. Who are those 3 partners? Anyone wants to guess? Who are the 3 partners that contribute to man? His father, his mother, and the Almighty. The Father and the Mother and the Almighty. The Father gives him 5 things, physiological things. The Mother gives him 5, and the Almighty gives him 10. And of that 10 is the soul. And then God tells, and then it says like this, and that's what. We're all composed of something from our Father, something from our Mother, and something from the Almighty. And what happens when the Almighty decides that it's time for us to pass? He takes what He gave, and He leaves what the parents gave. The parents gave bones and sinews and blood and brain, like all the physical things, all the hardware. And what did the Almighty give? All the software. The difference between hardware and software is that hardware is what you could see. You get touch. You see, like there's a brain, there's limbs, it's a body. You could see and touch it, but it doesn't work unless it's got the software. What's the software? The soul. So the Almighty pulls out the software. Once again, it's like, yes, you can have some sort of mass of cells, but what makes it alive? What gives it life? The fact that it has a soul in it. If it didn't have a soul, all would be just a hunting mess of dead. Oh, you want to read them? I'll read them to you. Okay. I'll read it to you. Ready? And there's 5 of the father, 5 of the mother as well. Ruach, which means spirit, neshama, soul, klaster ponim, the countenance of the face, re'iyas einayim, the vision. So you have an eye, but the eye doesn't work. Some people have eyes, but they're blind. So the vision of the eye, hearing of the ear, the ability to speak, the ability to walk. Bina means insight. Hastel is another form of intelligence. Those are 10. Ruach, neshama, klaster ponim, re'iyas ein, shmiras ozen, di propel, chordlayim, bina, v'hastel. Sorry, that's only it's only 9. Oh, so maybe it's only 9. Yeah, so it looks like it's only 9. Ruach, neshama, klaster ponim.
Was the soul the first thing you mentioned?
Yes. Well, different elements of the soul. Like if we want to break this down, we talk about the 5 different elements of the soul, chaya, yechida. That's right, because there's the general category, which is called soul, and then there's break it down to the components of the soul. So you have the ruach, the neshama, the nefesh, the chaya, and yechida. If you want to hear more about this, I would advise you to listen to some of the Kabbalah stuff that they always talk about. What are the roles, and what do animals have? Animals have some sort of spirit, some sort of life that they have to them, but they don't have human souls. So they have some of the 5, but not the others, etc. And there's higher levels, lower levels. Well, yeah, but they don't have the same as a human soul. It's not at all the same. So they're not capable of free will, right? An animal can't decide to go to hunger strike. Not possible. Because we have a much more sophisticated. Yeah, but that's not a hunger strike. A hunger strike means, because that's emotionally, it's like the fact that animals feel the same love for their children as humans do. That's not where we're different. We're different. We're in our intellectual means that feeling pain and pleasure is not a uniquely human experience. That's one of the reasons why we in the mitzvah of shuluch hakan send away the mother when we take away the baby, or not slaughter the mother and child on the same day. These are mitzvahs that because we have to learn to be kind and benevolent and just, and we don't cause pain to animals because they do experience pain the same way humans do. However, so an animal grieves, a human grieves also. If a human's upset and sad because they lost something, they could also have no appetite. That's not a hunger strike. Hunger strike was what Natan Sharansky did, the refusnik in the Soviet Union, where he went 120 days refusing food, and they would have to put a pipe down his esophagus every day, every 2 days, and pour like this protein mass into his innards to keep him alive. That's a hunger strike. That an animal can't do. To be depressed, an animal can do, and to experience death and bereavement, an animal can do, but it cannot do that. That's what I meant by hunger strike. The depressed goat didn't eat, but wasn't doing a hunger strike.
So, on what grounds God determines how a soul should be rich or poor or blind?
We don't know.
Huh?
I don't know.
It doesn't seem fair either.
Well, we don't know. But I could have a 4th class on this also, exactly, because there are other statements in the Talmud that talk about, well, what do you do if you want to get rich? And, there's ways to overcome that. By sheer force of determination and prayer and other things, you could reverse this kind of. If someone really wants to be wealthy, but it happens to be that they're not wealthy by design of that, of God determining what's going to be to their drop, right?
Shouldn't you be born with a tag?
Yeah, some people are, some people, you meet them and you're like, how this guy made so much money? Not exactly the sharpest knife in the drawer. But they make the money because, I'm sure you meet people in your business that are like, they're just huge business. And you're like, okay, somehow the Almighty just loves this guy and they just made it, despite the fact that they're just not so intelligent. Sometimes you see people that are really intelligent, really gifted, and went to Harvard Law School, and they just didn't work for them, Why? Because there's an element of that. But there's other sources that discuss, like what you said, that if someone wants to overcome that, they can. So that's where the free will kind of plays in.
What about personality? Is that something God gives you, or is that from your parents? But you
It's
said the
Could
face.
be mom or dad.
and it's probably a mix of nature and nurture. It's related to where do you get your mitos from? Sometimes you see families that everyone's really quiet and meek, and you see the families everyone's jolly, making jokes and funny.
Face. What do you mean?
It means that
Features?
there's this hard to define, but just countenance that a live person has that a dead person doesn't have. The face has a certain glow to it. But I'm sure if we go to the commentaries in the back, that might give us more insight into that. But that's the simplistic understanding.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
So at night when you're sleeping, the soul goes to God. Right?
So the Talmud says, sleep is a 60th of death. That's 1.5% of death. Why? Because there's a certain element of your soul leaving in a certain way. Of course, your heart's still pumping, you're still alive, the software is still there, but it's being updated. That's a nice example. It's like being updated, right? When you turn on your computer, it's like...
What did you do with before computers?
Or what? We'd have to give other metaphors. But it's a good metaphor. It's like, yes, the software is still there, but it's updating it, It's being updated. So, yes, there is a certain element of the soul exiting, but it's still there.
Soul in the room is updating. Where we are sleeping, it's updating in that same room.
What do you mean?
I don't understand.
Your soul does not leave your body.
Yeah, your soul's still within your body. That's
It's
right.
inside and it's updating.
Yeah, that's a nice way to say it. I made that up right now, but that's the idea. If we follow the metaphor of hardware and software, that's what we would say. It's still there, but it's updating.
So dreaming is like God.
It seems like the dream is more of a conscious and subconscious and unconscious discussion. It will be related to one of the variants of the soul.
Would it be a discussion about yourself?
Huh?
Would it, when you're dreaming,
Sometimes,
consider-
sometimes there is elements of prophecy that are, I'm sure it's happened.
Talk about it in the Torah.
Huh?
Dreams are dreamt.
That's right.
Because
That's right.
Every dream means something. When you're dreaming,
Right,
it
right.
means
Something
something.
else.
Right. So the Talmud, there's about 4 pages in the Talmud. In fact, in this book, this one, all the way at the end of the 4 pages, enormous pages in Talmud that talk about all dreams and what they mean, and what they could mean, what they don't mean, when they don't mean anything, when they do mean something. If you see this, if you see that, it gives like lists of hundreds of things, what you see, what they mean.
Does it relate to the soul, though, in those dreams?
Yeah. Well, the soul or some degree of prophecy. I met a guy yesterday for lunch. And he told me that he had an experience. This is a guy who doesn't believe in God or anything. He calls himself an agnostic. So therefore, he has a problem whenever he sees something which is too much of a coincidence for it. So he never, ever, ever remembers his dreams. Ever. Never. One time, he remembers his dream, and in his dream, he had a very bizarre dream. And the next day, he woke up and he remembered it. And the whole day was bothering him. What was his dream? He wasn't able to urinate. Now, when he urinated, it was urinating all these different colors. I'm sure that would freak him out. I guess he remembered it, right? Fine, the whole day he's bothered by this. He gets a call from his dad. Last night, in the middle of the night, I felt terrible. I went to the hospital, and they found out that I have a urinary tract infection. My friend told me this yesterday. So he's like, but he never in his life remembered a dream. He doesn't remember any dreams. And he remembered this one time a dream, and he couldn't urinate, and then he wasn't able to, and there was blood everywhere, and then his dad told me he had a urinary tract infection. And he was in the hospital that same night. So he said, it's probably just a coincidence. That's what he said. And I don't know, maybe it was a coincidence. Okay, probably. I think it's remarkable to have such a specific dream and to it be so out of character. And so, what am I saying? Do I know what it means? No. But is there this idea of dreams having certain realities? Absolutely. So we're continuing. Go ahead.
Your family member who's dead in your dream.
That's also discussed.
Is that the soul connecting to each other?
Is that the soul connecting? I don't know.
In the dream,
I don't know. It's a good question. Yeah, it's a good question. I'm sure over those 4 pages of Talmud, it discusses what happens when you meet someone who is since deceased. That's a good question. Anyhow, okay. So when does the child get the soul at conception? When does a child get the Yetzer Ra? And the word you guys know what the Yetzer Ra means? Evil inclination. What is an evil inclination? It's a force. It's a power. It's an entity that is not essential, but it's a force within ourselves that compels us to favor the body over the soul.
No,
Something
evil,
about maturity.
evil inclination. I thought it was whether you do bad or good.
No,
I
but
mean,
they say
whether you
when-
do something bad or good. Not
What is it about the bread? I don't understand.
A child doesn't call his father Abba until he eats bread. That's what it says. Either way, the Talmud here continues and says, Antoninus asks, Marcus Aurelius Antoninus asks Rabbi Judah the Prince, when does a child get the Yetzer Hara? So they say that he gets it at birth. At birth. So the soul comes at conception. 9 months later, when the child's about to be born, child's being born, the child gets the forces that are going to compel him to favor the body over the soul. Okay? Just hold that thought for a second. And then it proves it corroborates it from a verse in Scripture, in Genesis, that says, Lefetach chatas rovetz. At the entrance, sin crouches. Okay? So if I ask you, when does someone get a soul? You'll say at conception. Why? Because just like a meat cannot withstand and preserve itself, self-preserve, unless it's salted. So we cannot have life without our soul. When did someone get the Yetzer Ra? At birth. And it's corroborated from a verse in Genesis that says, Lefetach chatas rovetz, at the entrance, sin crouches. Okay? You guys hold that thought for a second? Now, I need everyone's attention now because this is like a little bit of work, a little bit of mental gymnastics or mental acuity required. Too late, but there's a good payoff.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay. Has anyone here ever heard about what the child does in utero? Learns. What does child learn? Child learns the whole Torah. Okay? Anyone knows what happens to that whole Torah? What happens when the child's about to be born?
Forget.
What happens?
made to forget.
Angel comes.
An angel comes down. I've heard, and then your brother said, no, that's just a superstition. That, the angel touches his lips.
Well, that's not a superstition. That's in the Talmud. In Nida
you're
30b.
saying about this is
The superstition is that this indentation.
The angel says,
Yeah. Okay. So it's like this: a child in utero knows the whole Torah. As they're about to be born, an angel comes and touches it on its mouth, makes it forget it. So I was always taught, by the way, until I saw the actual Talmud inside from the sources, I was always taught that an angel teaches the child Torah. Did you ever hear that? The angel teaches the Torah. It's actually not
That's
true.
what I
The angel makes the child forget.
So who teaches it?
Good question. It's a soul is a soul is a soul.
So
Whether you're Jewish or not, exactly. If you got a soul, then... But who teaches the child Torah? Doesn't say. That's your question. The angel makes the child forget the Torah. Who teaches the child Torah? I don't know. Well, let's hold off the question. Don't give any answers yet. That's question number 1. Question number 2. What's the value of learning something, and then if you're just going to forget it?
In its entirety.
Angel come, hit you in the mouth, and you forget it.
Because as you grow up and you start learning things, it like reinforces.
Okay, that's a classic answer. That when, even though you forgot it, but it's easier to recapture it. That's a classic answer. Hold that thought. Don't hold that thought. It's a good thought. Let's put it on the side for a second. I want to tell you guys one more thing here. The Talmud says, child knows the whole Torah in utero When they're about to be born, angel comes, gives it a little patch in the mouth, forgets it. It brings a verse to corroborate this idea. Do you guys want to guess which verse it brings? It brings a verse from the beginning of Genesis. Lefetach chatas rovetz. At the entrance, sin crouches. The very same verse that in the other end of the Sea of Talmud, in the book of Sanhedrin, so one's over here and one's over here, it uses the same verse to tell us that a child gets the Yetzer Hara at birth. So the third question we have to ask is that there's a general principle in all of Talmud. One verse, one law. You can only use each verse one time. If you want to teach me two things, you got to give me two verses. If you want to teach me three things, you have to give me. How do we know that we're not allowed to mix milk and meat in the Torah? Who knows what the verse is?
Boil a kid in its mother's milk.
That's right. The verse tells us, do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. Lo tevashel yadi b'chalev mo. Don't mix milk and meat. How many times does it say the verse, don't cook a kid in its mother's milk? 3 times. Once to tell us that you cannot cook milk and meat. Number 2, that you cannot consume milk and meat. Number 3, you cannot benefit from milk and meat. How come I need to say it 3 times? Because there's a rule. Every verse, one law. You want 3 laws? You got to give me 3 verses. This Talmud seems to be in conflict with that principle. I have 2 laws, or 2 ideas. Number 1, child forgets the whole Torah. Angel comes, says forgets the whole Torah. Which verse am I using for that? At the entrance, sin crouches. I want to tell you another thing. Child gets the Yetzer Hara. Child gets the evil inclination at birth. I can't use the same verse twice. How does the Talmud, even though it's different books of the Talmud, but they're using the same verse. There's no 2 verses, there's only 1 verse. How do you use the same verse twice? We know as a principle in all of Talmud, you can only use 1 verse for 1 law. The answer! This is where the payoff comes, guys. When a child's in utero, so someone asks, who teaches the child Torah? What do we say? When does the child get the soul? At conception. What's a soul? What is a soul? Soul is something which is the flame of God. Can we think of anything else as the flame of God? What else is the flame of God? The Torah. Exactly. So the soul is an entity which is pure Torah. Thus, the child has a soul. By proxy, they have Torah. They don't need anyone to teach it to them. You ask who taught it to them, they don't need to have a soul. What happens? Comes along birth. One thing happens. The child gets the Yetzer Hara. But as a result of that, they forget the Torah. Why? Because, like we said, with the body and the soul, suddenly the influence of the body is submerging the soul deep within someone. If I punch you, you feel it. If I punch your soul, you don't feel it. Why? Because your soul is buried under this mountain of your body that happens at birth. You forget your Torah. What do you mean? How did I forget the Torah? Right? It's in my soul. Yes, you still have it within you. It's still on your soul, but it's far from your consciousness because it's buried now. So essentially, if I ask you, the verse that tells us at the entrance, sin crouches, how many laws does it teach us? How many lessons does it teach us? Only 1. But that 1 has multiple ramifications. You have the Yetzer Hara, you have the influence of the body, and now what happens to the soul? The soul is demoted. The soul is now submerged. The soul is now buried within ourselves, and therefore we don't remember it. Because just like we said, you don't have that sensory link with your soul anymore.
But what's the purpose of forgetting the Torah?
So you didn't forget it. That's the point. You didn't forget it.
But
It escaped your consciousness.
But you said God makes it send angel to make it forget.
Okay, so that's why it's a little nuance here. What does the angel do? The angel just gives you the power of the Yetzer Hara. That's what the angel does. And why the mouth and how the mouth is there's a lot more details here that we're not getting into. The mouth is the channel with which the Yetzer Hara is given to us. You don't actually forget it. Your soul doesn't change. Your soul still knows the whole Torah. It's just that you forget it from your consciousness because now you have something else which has pushed your soul all the way back to the back seat. And essentially, your job in your life, like we said, you've got the body and the soul. Your job is to uplift your body and let the influence of your soul shine forth.
That's a very good question.
Yes.
If we remember the Torah while we are born, come on, then we would be a better person.
Of course. But then it would be no fun. Because everyone would be a great person. It wouldn't be no challenge.
No passion.
To me, the big question is why?
Why what?
Why was it necessary for the angel to come down? And
Yeah, that's what
Because
I'm
remember, if we didn't have the influence of the body, if we didn't have the Yetzer Hara, then we wouldn't be able to get any reward for any of our actions because we had no conflict. It's like you're saying, hey, I went to the gym and I was holding this bar and it was great. And the trainer comes and puts weights on it. Oh, now I can't lift it. Well, why did they do it for me? It was perfect earlier. Yeah, it was perfect, but there was no challenge. And if there's no challenge, there's no growth.
Okay, no.
That's right.
Rabbi,
So-
can somebody be soulless? Can you literally have a person that has no soul?
You could have someone whose soul is so battered that it doesn't have any influence. They still have a soul, but their soul is so feeble and so weak. Yeah, it means, like we said, the greatness is having your body uplifted to become more spiritual. Wickedness is where your soul becomes enmeshed into your body. So your soul becomes weaker and weaker and weaker and less spiritual and less remarkable. So closer to being soulless.
So the Yetzirah could really take that.
Oh yeah. So we all start off with this
I have a
balance.
candidate for
But like in Alzheimer patients, they don't know anything about
That's the same
all
question.
that.
That's the same question you asked. What about someone's in a coma? Someone doesn't have consciousness. It's not
Yeah.
about consciousness.
So
It's
why
about
does-
reality.
If they don't know who they are or what, why can't the soul just go away?
Because that's not the way it is. The Almighty forces the soul for
That's
whatever
the
reasons.
life
Reasons
force.
that are in His hands, not in ours.
When does God decide? Okay, it's time.
When?
only he knows.
I mean,
Yeah. It's,
I don't know.
if we knew, then we would be able to do a lot more skiing and skydiving and anything like that.
Yeah.
We're good.
The elevation of the soul is more
And not elevation.
Kabbalah.
Ooh,
Not
slow
that-
down.
yeah.
Elevation of what?
is as
Elevation.
you're moving, not elevation, as you're moving to get closer, to get your soul back. I like to think of it as getting back to God, getting closer. Is that more like what Kabbalah works toward? Getting
Kabbalah is a field of scholarship within Torah that is esoteric because it's only meant for people that have already studied all of Talmud and know it backwards and forwards. So it's not really for our discussion. But these lessons that we talked about are from the Talmud itself. So Talmud is for all Jews to learn the principles. So I wouldn't believe this would fall under the categories of Kabbalah. Once you start breaking down the soul and the components of the soul, etc., then you kind of run the risk of dipping your toe into the whole Kabbalah world that I don't feel comfortable talking about because I don't think I'm really holding and having that discussion on that level.
It looks like we are sent on this earth to repent for our sins.
Whoa.
Because
no,
this
no,
earth
no.
is nothing, it's just suffering for some people.
Whoa. Repent for our sin. If we're sent to repent, we haven't done any sins, but then we're sent here.
No, but there are like some people really suffering,
So that's another question. So that's a whole series of why we suffer and how we find meaning in
it's
suffering.
not good for some people who are blind, totally can't see anything. And the
Yeah,
soul is
that's a
just there.
very, very good question. These are all very good
That's the
grave.
body. It's the body.
These are grave
There's
questions.
no purpose.
Whoa, there's always purpose.
For the blanket, we
Yes,
don't know.
yes.
Well,
They have to
people-
find
I
meaning
have
in
a
their
lady that comes in my store all the time. You swear she could see, and you know she can't. I mean, it comes in.
You know, it's about killing of innocent children. We don't see a lot of it here in stateside, but look around us globally, what's happening. And then you can break down what you're thinking and say, forgetting something as simple as flying. Look at the horrors
Yeah.
that occur outside.
Like the Holocaust
Disabled.
and World Trade Center, I mean, they had miserable deaths.
Yeah.
Whoa. Let's not put the Holocaust anywhere near World
Yeah,
Trade
No,
Center.
the
Rabbi
World Trade
told us to
Center.
stay away from
No, not to stay with the whole thing, but the magnitude and the
Yeah,
enormity.
don't put that.
In Auschwitz, they were killing every day 24,000 Jews, which is every single day means in 2.5 hours every day in Auschwitz they were killing as many people died in the World Trade Center. It's not at all comparable.
But it's
Holocaust.
Still, it's still going
Yes,
on.
I'm saying it's a good question, but I'm saying let's not put them together.
All right,
Important.
so what would be the next class? Like,
So the next class, there's more, but I think we'll stop here. I think we got a nice little bit of information about the soul before birth. There's some more stuff that I have here. I have, let's say, I guess I'll leave this for next class. A little bit of Abraham, Moses, and Adam, how Adam's soul and how the interplay Adam's soul versus his body, and what was the roots of the role of the Yetzer Hara and kind of manifestation of Moses. There's other things, and also the oath that a child is administered before they're born as well. That will feed very nicely into this. Very interesting stuff. So we have more stuff. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I was curious about you saying 40 days before
Conception.
your conception, your soul, whatever.
No.
no, you're
Your soul.
It's a prophetic voice. No soul, no nothing.
But does God decide where your soul is going? I mean, I'm just curious as to if your soul's already there somewhere out in wherever it's supposed to be. I mean, how do you which soul goes into which?
These are decisions that we don't have to make.
yeah.
You know, the Talmud tells us we're here, and we know none of us made decisions to be born. And we're here because the Almighty put us here. We have to do the best with what we're dealt. And in fact, the Talmud tells us, this may be relating to your question. For humans, it's better off, mostly for most of us, that to not have ever been born, not have ever existed. More suffering than good. There's more risks. There's more pitfalls. There's more. It's better for a person to not been born more than he should have indeed been born. But now that we're born, we have to do our best. We have to study as much Torah as we can, do as many mitzvahs, do as much kindness, and charity, and good things, good deeds as we possibly can to try to elevate our body and protect and guard the sanctity of our soul. So yes, agreed. For many and most people, but we're here because they might have put us here. Now let's do the best we can with the cards we're dealt.
And be thankful. every day.
Yes.
We try really hard to live as long as we can. So is that because we are mostly concerned with the body and the soul?
Well, the reason why humans want to live as much as we can is because that reason. To us, we have such a body-first attitude that the idea of death is just, our body doesn't work anymore. Oh gosh, we're done, right? So we're very terrified of that. So we're terrified of death because we think, our body's not working. So what are we? Because we don't. It's not only that; it's we feel that it's that it's it. It's all over for us.
So,
But let me answer this question. So that's why most people don't want to die, but even Jews don't want to die because here is the opportunity. Once you're dead, once your body is not married to the soul anymore, you got no option. You can't do any mitzvahs. You can't wear tzitzis that you could buy for $10 in a store and fulfill a mitzvah.
We have no free will.
Exactly. You got no more opportunity. That's why we want to live as long as we can, to do as many mitzvahs as we can, to grab as much as we possibly can of spiritual greatness. Your question.
I think you kind of answered it, but I'll say it. I don't want to prolong the class anymore. In the sad note, I was thinking of Rabbi Cohn's situation. Well, if he is on the same belief level you are, was very apparent to all the discussions and charity and the desire for him to prolong the boy's passing rather than looking at from the more spiritual side. And I would believe that he and or his wife, maybe he more than his wife, that's not the way it's perceived by some. Anyhow, that he did not want to let go. But if he had the same belief segment that we're talking about, he would say, well, it's something that's okay, it's something we ought,
It's
to
very
move.
hard for
Yeah,
a
but
child
wait,
to pass
but
before a
you
parent.
see, the
under
point, I
any
guess,
circumstance.
for us guys,
Right.
at our level, if I can put
Right.
myself at our level, we're saying, I miss this one. If he or she dies, I'm in pain and all that. But for someone who's educated as you are and as he is, you would want to think maybe their process would be a little different.
Well, she said
But
things like
evidently not.
they do certain things that they always did with him, and they said replace him, and so they do believe that the
present-
soul is
But
with
that's
them.
not the part I'm talking about.
Preservation of life is one of the biggest mitzvahs that there could
Right.
possibly be. And what I find remarkable about the Cones
Wait.
and their unfortunate
Listen,
situation,
Let me go back. You said the
preservation of life is one of the biggest mitzvahs out there.
But
Exactly.
you said,
Yeah, I can see
Because
that.
life is opportunity, and life is all, it's valuable. Every second is valuable.
Okay.
oh, well, I would think what Barry was getting at, that they were trying to prolong his life, but he was suffering so bad that,
Yeah,
He
it's a
would do
decision.
it
It's
right.
decisions, and it's a situation we hope we'll never get to. But I think what's remarkable about what they taught all of us throughout this most challenging episode was their unshakable faith, and the lessons that we could take from looking at them, and despite the fact that they were dealt such a difficult situation, and
Well, she
how
said that
they never lost it, they never
Right.
abandoned it,
Every day there might be something that would happen that would turn it around. And look, I know I got a lot of people to sign that petition, and she got 100,000 signatures in a short period of time, and then the FDA or whatever it is, Food and Drug, waited so long to finally give the go ahead. He had passed, but they tried everything. They
No, I
didn't leave a
understand.
stone
It's
unturned.
that psyche that you're talking about that I don't quite mesh, except with the simple statement that preservation of life is everything.
not everything is the biggest mitzvah in the world.
Okay.
And if it's your
Not the
your
biggest mitzvah in the
child,
world.
I
One of the
can
biggest mitzvahs in the world.
only imagine that I know people have lost children, and they're
Oh, it's a horrible thing.
they're
Clearly
they're
horrible.